everybody, and welcome to GenFriends. I'm your host, Cheri Passy from Carolina Girl Genealogy. And once again, we've got a fabulous panel and a fabulous guest. We've got Mary Kircher Roddy from MKR Genealogy. Hi, Mary.
Hi there.
So good to have you here.
Great to be here.
We've got Laura Hedgecock from Treasure Chest Memories. Hi.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm glad you're here. Dan Earl's here, our family history guy. Hi, Dan.
Hello.
Good to have you as always. Melissa Barker, our archive lady. Hi, Melissa.
Hi, everybody. So glad to be here.
I'm always envious of those things. Look at those archives. I can't wait till we get back in the archives. And then we've got Shelley Murphy, family.
Murray, huh?
I know.
Yes.
Every time I get to you, I flub up the introductions.
It's Murphy.
So
glad to be here.
Maybe it's something that people. Maybe it's something people can look forward to. What is she going to say about Shelley this week?
I want to know what you're saying when we're not here. How about that?
No. But last but not least, we have got a very, very special guest with us tonight. We've got Valerie Elkins, and you may know Valerie as a writer and author. She is the CEO of Family Cherished, which is her business where she coaches and she specializes in family history. We had asked Valerie to come on tonight because Valerie has a new book. I've got some.
I have that.
And it's called Beyond Basic Journal Writing. Create a powerful legacy by writing with intention and purpose. I like that, with intention and purpose. I love that. Valerie, where did you get the idea for this book? Because you see journals and things like that a lot. But I tell you, this one is unique. I really like it. Where did you get your ideas for this?
Well, I've been a lifelong journaler. And I would go back, I'd write in my journal for a while. And then later I would go back and read it. And I would sound so manic because one day I would just over the moon. I was so happy. And the next day by the time I wrote again, I was really depressed for a while, or stressed or something. And so it was up and down. And I would look at it and go, this isn't a very good representation of my life and who I am. Then I would stop for a while, and usually I would only write during, times of great joy or great, and so during this whole time during COVID and everything, I thought about it, there has to be a way because mainly I wrote this method for me. It's called the 31 Days to Become Unforgettable. Mm-hmm. And that, I think, they say that elderly people, that's their greatest fear when it comes to them passing away, that they fear. And I thought if people only could read my journals, they're going to not know who I am. And so I really wanted to record the things that were most important to me. Mm-hmm. And things that as a genealogist that you wish you knew about your ancestors, and so I thought I'm going to break it down for 31 days.
Yeah.
And each day you write about a topic that I give you, and then you write or gather that information. Or even if you don't write all your stories on that topic for that day, because you're only doing that one topic for that day. And the goal is, once you get into it, it's easy to go, I'm so into it, I need to do this tomorrow. Yeah. And then the next day you get sidetracked, and then all of a sudden you only got 2 days worth of stuff. So you start that day, you do as much as you can, then you stop. And then the next day you go on to the next topic. So at the end of the 31 days, you at least have covered those important topics that you want to be saved. And write as journal prompts. Right. So cover, you say, okay, I'm going to write the story. You write a few keywords. And then when you go back to journaling normally, you can go, and you've got all these guided journal prompts taken from your life.
I like day 9 because it's quirky, funny things that may have happened to you. Sometimes we don't think about those things. We're like, I was bored. And then these were my parents, and it just becomes really kind of dry. You're trying hard to get that story out, but these prompts, I love that. What quirky things, school things, your siblings, tell about your siblings, all sorts of wonderful, wonderful prompts in here. I was telling everybody earlier that my mom has been looking for something to do with her life. She's recently widowed. It's been about a year now, and she doesn't. Her career was taking care of my dad when he was sick. She did that for a decade, and I suggested she get your book after I got it and looked at it. I said, "Mom, I know what you need to do." And so because you can get this on Kindle in the hardback or the Kindle version. Shelley's got the Kindle version. Laura's got the Kindle version. Yeah. So she's going to get the Kindle version and then start figuring out.
Pretty.
I like the fact too that you go over tools. Gather your tools. Why is that important?
Well, I always look at me as a perfect test case to this because I have like ADD. I get so distracted really easily. So I need to have a good pen that's smooth, that doesn't smear, that doesn't, scratch. I need to have, the right atmosphere. I need to have all these different things. So I found all the best things that I use and I shared those. And I said, okay, before you start, this is what you're going to do. This is what you're going to have. And you're ready to go. And I suggest putting your journal in a basket that you stick on your bed or you stick on a chair somewhere where you do it every day. So you go, it's that visual cue, like
right.
I write in my journal. And you just commit to doing it for 31 days. And even if you don't finish it as well as you would like, you've got a great start of saving those really important.
Yes.
Like one of them, one day is, what's your 10 best stories?
Yeah. Yeah.
The ones that you want, people want to repeat it, things that you want to be sure and share. Or what's 25 things about you that nobody else knows?
Yeah, I loved that one. I love that one. Yeah.
Things, that are going to be so valuable and so meaningful to people who come behind you that want to know you, that they're going to know the real you rather than, what's your favorite color?
And I think too, a lot of people don't journal because they're like, my life is not interesting. Nobody's going to want to read this. But with these kind of prompts,
everything is interesting.
Everything is interesting. Melissa, you've got a question?
Yes. I actually started journaling when I started doing genealogy because it was 30 years ago. Because I do not have any journals or diaries or scrapbooks. I have very little family records from any of my family. So I thought, you know what? I would love to have had a diary or a journal from one of my ancestors. So I'm going to leave mine. So I started doing that. When I teach, I'm always telling my students, get to know everything about your ancestors. I mean, I want to know what my ancestors had for breakfast. What were their hobbies? What, did they stub their toe? I want to know it all. And so when people read my journals, they're going to think, wow, this is really TMI, but it's all in there. So, but you touched on it just a bit, but, and the book will help, I know, but what is your journal schedule, or do you write in the morning? Do you write in the evening, or do you write both? Or
I always wanted to be one of those people that write every single day. And I am not. And what happens, there's a lot of people who think that. They think, oh, I have to write every day. I have to be really regular. And then when they get off track, they think, oh no, I've blown it. I have to start all over again. I'm not a good journal. I need a better routine. And what I do is I take my planner and I write little notes on that day. Something that happened so that I can be sure when I go to journal that week. Usually I end up journaling like on every Sunday. And I look at those notes and I go, oh, that's right, this happened. And then I'll go off and write on those things. Unless during the week something comes up that is really vital. And there's so many times I can't stress enough about how important it is to write down important things that happen to you, because you think at the time that it's so powerful, so moving, and so, oh my gosh, I'll never forget this. I have gone back through my old journal and read things and go, what?
Exactly.
I barely, sometimes I don't even remember it happening at all. Time, I know I thought, oh, well, this is so big, I'll remember this always. You just don't. Or maybe I just don't. But
No, I think we all do that. And I've got like journals I'll start and I'll be really, really good and I'll write for a while. And then like a year later, 2 years later, 10 years later, whatever, I'll pick it up and start. I got lots and lots of gaps in my journals. Laura, you have a question?
It's really along those same lines. I did the same thing. I had hardback pretty journals by the sofa, so I could, when the kids were little, so I could write down the hilarious things that they did.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like a third full. The kids are 20. Like there was material. So what would your advice be to somebody like me that is very scattered and undisciplined about, especially, what goes on in the living room?
That's kind of the same thing in the journal, in the book. I suggest over 25 different types of journals. And one of them was, the things kids say. And you keep I kept a little journal out and I would stick it somewhere like on the dining room table or somewhere where I could have access to it. But having different journals for different things and having them in different places, like having mini journals that they're called pocket journals. Great thinkers like Mark Twain and Ernest Hemingway and all these different people would keep them gentlemen used to keep them in their pockets all the time and they would write things. And the reasons why we know these great quotes from them, because they wrote them down in those books and we have access to them. So I think a lot of us could be very famous someday if we just wrote down some of those thoughts that we have. But having more than one journal and having them spread out throughout the place, whether it's in your backpack or in your car or a diaper bag or, on your shelf or your desk. I have one, let's see. I have this one here that is.
I've got that one.
It's
and have I written in it? No.
You write a few lines a day, every day for 5 years.
Yeah, I'm going to get started now.
Well, I just have it sitting in front of me on my computer, and before I start work that day, I just take the time to do it. So I think for me, having more than one journal and having it in different places, and some people just don't resonate with handwritten journals because it's too cumbersome. And so having using Day One app, I highly recommend, because
Day One app.
You can use it on your phone, your laptop, your computer. It does a geolocation, it does the weather.
Oh, wow.
And images.
We will put the link to that in the show notes.
So you think people do you think people have one per place that they write better? Or do you think, because I don't think he's ever going to watch GenFriends. I do well writing during church.
Well, yeah.
And I get introspective and I'll write like decent stuff.
I think everybody has to find their own, groove. What works for you? Maybe it's a certain place. Maybe it's a certain time of day. Maybe, it's a certain situation, or maybe it's just a commitment to.
Maybe.
Right.
Shelley's got a question.
Well, one of her chapters is on preparation and following a little bit with what Laura said, a little bit what Melissa said. So say I'm a first-time writer, or I'm thinking about journaling or even writing a book, but how, based on what worked for you, is there a neutral zone that everybody should have basics in prepping for this, or the environment, or whatever, or do you just sit down and go for it, and say, this is my writing time? What do you suggest or recommend for that on preparation?
Well, I think first comes the commitment that you want to journal. You realize why you want to. What's your why? For me, it was, I want to leave something behind for my family, and I want them to know who I am. And I want something that really showcased who I am. And so for me, I'm a high-read journaler, so there's some things that I write by hand. And usually those are the things that are emotional or something that I need deeper introspection, to stop and think about what I'm writing. But when it comes time for a memory, something that I need something to move really fast and I can type faster than I can write, is I will do the day one app and I can write very quickly in there. So in answer your question, Shelley, you need to look at what's your style. What works for you? Do you work better when you're handwriting, or and feel more inspired by those pretty pens and those pretty journals? Or some people look at those pages and that blank sheet and go, oh my gosh, I'm going to mess it up,
Right.
Well, so finding what works for you, but also, Melissa, because of preservation for paper journals, what I do is I scan my paper journals and upload it into day one. And I can choose the date that it goes in. So that way it's now online and it's in the cloud, and I can save that. So if something should happen to my paper journals, with all these, natural disasters going on, it's always a big fear of mine of losing all this, stuff we have saved. So really you have to look at, and then just, commit to trying it and finding out what works for you.
Great. Dan, you've got a question.
Yeah. So as a younger person on the panel, shall I say, with
What's he trying to say?
as a less experienced person on the panel, as a person who has not circumnavigated the sun as many times as some people on the panel.
He's digging a hole deeper.
There's a lot of ways I could say this.
He knows what he's doing.
So as a younger...
So Valerie, you're not going to put up with his stuff, right?
No,
Okay, I got him.
And she's gonna log this in her journal. Come on, Dan.
she's journaling this right now.
Yeah.
So any advice for younger journalers? So people that are my age, millennials that have kids, maybe even my wife and I have tried to encourage our kids to write in their journals during the pandemic and during other key points in our family's history to kind of jot down what they're thinking. And any thoughts on how to encourage younger folks on doing this?
Yeah, years ago, I don't know how many years ago, it was one of my early presentations at Roots Tech. I talked about journaling a lot. And so I interviewed, I don't even remember how many people that I interviewed who were journalers. I reached out into social media and to all my friends and contacts and said, I need to know who journals. And do you know who the majority were? I was so surprised. They were all young people. They were all in college. They were all millennials. They were all, some of them were in high school, and they were fanatical journal people, writers. I mean, and I learned, in fact, I used the what's his name? No, I can't remember his name. I know you guys know who he is.
A preacher?
No. He started his own company, and he's a real young kid, and what was that, where you could hire genealogists, and he did that genealogy, called something else, and
it's not coming. You'll remember it. We'll put it in the notes if you...
2 o'clock in the morning.
I said, don't call me.
He was the one who showed me the pen that he used, and how he writes is just beautiful, and how he's just committed. And then he would write his goals and what he has learned, and my daughter and her friends are all avid journalists. And so I think the thing that I think for younger people especially is finding something that inspires you. My daughter, who's the big journalist, she will choose a journal that's specific to a friend's personality.
Oh, yeah.
In fantasy, or they're interested in, I don't know, nature or something. She will find a journal that is just perfect for them, and she gifts that to them for their birthday or Christmas or whatever, and then they get excited about journaling. So I think sometimes
that's really cool.
The tool,
Yeah.
or finding something that really inspires you. If not that, then it's your why. So even though you're young, you still are experiencing
inexperienced.
Your perspective, for example, of how your family is adjusting to COVID, and the challenges that you're facing as a young family, that's going to be completely different than how somebody else does, experiences those things. And so you can be, I'll tell you a personal story, why I'm so passionate about saving stories. Years ago, is when Hurricane Katrina hit. And because of it, my husband's job was laid off. And it was like September, it was about September, and it was. And he, it was my son's birthday is coming up and Christmas was coming up, and I was freaking out going, we had just moved there less than 2 years. And so I thought of trying to sell the house and finding a job. And I was just having a major anxiety attack about it. And then all of a sudden I remembered the story of my great grandparents, Mammy and Papa, how they had gone through World War I, they had gone through World War II, they had gone through the Depression, they had a stillborn child, they had 2 sons serve in the military, and they'd gone through the Depression. And I thought of their story and I knew their story because I had researched it and looked it up, and I was very familiar with it. And suddenly I went, if they went through all of that and survived and got through that, I can get through this. And so that is why I write my stories, why I record those things, because someday my descendants may need those stories to look back on and go, I can get through it because Grandma got through it.
Oh, sure.
Your grandpa did.
Absolutely.
And so that's why it's important to save those stories, because you never know who was going to need a story when.
Exactly. When Dan was asking this question about getting kids to journal and things, it reminded me of, I had a really good friend. We still, every time I fly out to Salt Lake, we get together and things like that. But we would write each other and talk about what we had done at school today, and I'd say, oh, you talked to that boy and I saw you, and then she'd be writing, she wrote one, and it's a big thick spiral, and I still have it and she still has it. And then I've got another friend, we did the same thing. So that, write for each other, say, this is what we did today. Maybe you could assign the kids to, all right, you're going to write about everything we did on this trip today, or something, and maybe that will get them started. But that just reminded me of that little spiral that I've got with all these fun things about, oh, this boy looked at me today when we walked down the hall. Those crazy things that we do as a teenage girl.
My daughter and I have a shared journal where I will put down a question or a prompt, and then I will, on one side of the page, I will write my response to it.
Oh.
And she will write her response to that prompt on the other side of the page, and then she will take and write the next prompt and write.
Oh, I like that.
And that's something that is this great conversation that we probably wouldn't have say out loud.
Wow, that's wonderful. I love that idea.
Read each other's before you write your stuff? I mean, are you responding to what she wrote, or are you writing your own stuff?
2-page spread. So on the left side will be my response to the prompt. And on the right side, it'll be her response. And then on the next page, she'll write the prompt question. And then she'll respond on the left and I'll respond on the right.
But has she, I mean, does she look at before she writes the right page, does she look at what you wrote on the left page, or does
Yeah.
she just write it?
We always read what each other write. So it's really interesting. We have some really good, and then it instigates conversations, you know, for out loud later and say, oh, well, you know, when you wrote this, you know, that really touched me.
Wow. I like that. That is, what a wonderful treasure. Oh my gosh.
Really
that
is.
That is wonderful. Melissa, you've got a question?
Yeah, along with loving to journal myself, I love reading other people's journals and diaries from the past,
Yeah.
whether they've been published in a book or whether or not they're in an archives, like in my archives or another archives. And so would you encourage people, if they're thinking about starting to journal, or they've been journaling and they're kind of, you know, losing, I don't know, would you encourage people to read journals that are archived journals or things like that?
Well, one of the things that I did, my father-in-law wrote a journal, I think almost every single day of his adult life.
Wow.
And that one of the reasons why I talk about making sure you have the right tools, and most of the time he wrote in pencil and on really poor quality paper.
Mm-hmm.
So nothing inspires me more making sure that I have the right tools and everything else to make sure they last. You know, so thinking of archival quality, you know, paper and inks and those kinds of things, because when you can't read due to, you know, deterioration in age of the
Right.
nothing inspires you to do it better, because you're like, I know they said something really important right here, but I can't tell what it is.
You gotta tell what it is. Mary, you had another comment?
I just, I'm not a great journaler. I hate my handwriting, so that's part of the thing that bothers me. But we have been fortunate enough, my husband's a professor, to get to go on 3 sabbaticals. And so I started my first sabbatical and wrote letters home. It really was a blog, but there wasn't even a term blog in 2000 when I was doing this. I just called it my weekly letter home. And then that was to Ireland, and then we've had 2 to Australia. But the thing that I really treasured about it was I became more engaged in my world. And I was, you know, in Australia, and I was looking at the boats out there. And I knew that I was going to come home and write about that.
Wow.
And I wanted to be able to create a picture for people. So I'd like, you know, focus on what are the colors of the spinnakers on the sailboats out there.
Wow.
So I could come home and write about that. And it really made me so much more engaged in my daily life there, because I knew I was going to comment on it. So
and now you can go back and read that and feel like you're there, because you wrote some of the most wonderful details. Who would, you know, most of us, we went and saw the boats. You know what I mean?
And that's what I didn't want to come home and wrote. I thought,
yeah.
So
Anyway,
anyway,
about your handwriting, you could take those letters, scan them, and upload them into like day one. And if you had any pictures from that time period of the boats, you could add
that stuff is all computerized, and I've got pictures, and I put those together in books. I have a book for each of those sabbaticals. But
That's how fun. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Laura.
Yeah, just following up on Mary's comment, I have a box that I inherited from my parents after they died, where they saved all the letters I wrote them when I lived in Germany.
Oh.
And I wrote them often, and they were actually really entertaining, because I don't know why. It was just like, it was my journaling, I guess, at the time. So that's a good idea, Mary, to put those back with places we went and things like that. Or, you know, I found crazy thing, like I'd send them a postcard. It's like, I like this postcard enough to save it, so I'm sending it to you. Don't throw it away. But it really defines a child-parent relationship, that you could be kind of that tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah.
But then what's really frustrating to me is on the trip where they were killed, my mom had carpal tunnel syndrome, so she didn't journal as she normally did. she scribbled words that would help her remember what she wanted to journal.
Oh.
So I just have this little book of hardly legible words about their 3 weeks in Alaska. But I keep it because I don't know, maybe her ghost is going to come and decipher it for me. I don't know.
Oh gosh.
But yeah, it's still precious, even though I can't even, but because she meant to communicate.
Right.
She meant to leave it for us.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
yeah,
It's
I guess.
important to save those things and how important they are. I have a daughter with special needs.
Right.
And she, and I share this, I got her permission to share this, her story in the book, and it's in there, and it's very personal, but I think it's one reason why it's so important that we connect those stories when, especially when you have parents or grandparents who are gone. She didn't speak till she was 4 years old, and her teachers told her that told me that she would never read or write. And I said, you're wrong. And I took her home and I homeschooled her until she was in high school. And she went into high school and she graduated with honors.
Wow.
Want to send her transcript to her teachers?
You should.
You should.
The point is that this was a fighter. This was a girl who never gave up, no matter how hard it was. And it wasn't until after she graduated from high school that the gap between her and her peers became much more evident to her. She realized she was never going to drive. She was never going to have a career or go to college. And those things just began to overwhelm her. And she came to me one day and said, Mom, I can't do it anymore. It's just too hard. And as a parent, you're panicking, trying to find the right words that you can share to keep a child who is at a fragile place, to be able to give them the words. And suddenly I remembered the story of my grandmother, Murtis Beck, who, when she was pregnant with my dad, they were very poor in Alabama and went rabbit hunting, and somehow there was because they had to have food, that was going to be their meal, and there was an accident, and she was accidentally shot in the back. And they rushed her to the hospital and then they were rushing to her to the hospital, they got in a car accident.
Oh, geez.
And so my grandfather, my dad was born miraculously with only a broken clavicle. But my grandmother, the rest of her life, had her right hand frozen in a claw. She had a limp. And whenever she got stressed or emotionally upset, that she would have grand mal seizures.
Oh, wow.
And so she was never able to drive. She was never able to have a career, and she had to have people drive her around, and she had to live next door to her in-laws or her parents to help take care of and provide her needs. And so I told this story to my daughter, and then I said, but you know what? She lived in California, and that she wanted to fly to where we lived in Washington to go see her new grandchildren. And everybody told her she couldn't do it. And she said she was going to do it anyways. And she flew and came and saw us and enjoyed that. I was really young but I still remember, and I just adored her, and she was kind and she was patient and she was just loving. And, she died a few years later in another car accident that when somebody else was driving her. And I told my daughter about how brave she was and how she reminded me of this grandmother. And she said, she stopped and thought about it, and she goes, I guess I can keep going. And I made her a necklace with a picture of this grandmother. And so that she could go to that when she needed it. But having stories when you need it, because someday somebody in your family or somebody is going to need a story that you have, whether it's your life or it's somebody in your family that you've researched. And if you don't have those stories readily available and recorded, you'll have those opportunities that are missed. And so that was the main purpose with the book, was to get people to write their stories, to have those things recorded, so that when you are in a time of need, that you will have a story that your descendants years from now will be able to have that to lean upon.
That's beautiful. That's
Mm-hmm.
beautiful. And just the
It was.
smallest experience that we have, we don't know how that could impact somebody else's life. It may to us seem like just some ordinary thing, but to somebody else, it could be really, really big. And so, yeah, I agree. We really need to write those things down. Did anybody else, Melissa, do you have another question? Or was that one?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, just
No, you're fine.
I know that your book was self-published. Just wondered what was your thinking process or whatever as to going self-published as opposed to a traditional publisher?
Well, writing things that people have been telling me for years, you need to write a book. And I've been collecting material for years, but like everybody else, you get busy speaking and you have clients and you have family, and I just never had the time. And so I kept saying, but I would go to writers' conferences where I'd look at panels where they talk the difference between traditional and indie publishers, self-publishing. And I decided, okay, with indie publishing, you have much more control. You can control the cover, you control over the content.
Mm-hmm.
You also make more money than you would. And even nowadays, traditional publishers are going to make you, the author, do the marketing. So if you're going to do all the work of marketing, you should get a bigger percentage of
Yes.
what you're writing. So I decided I was going to do indie. And in this book was kind of an experiment that I said, okay, I'm going to see how far I can go with as little cost as possible. So I designed the cover myself. I did I bought a program to help with formatting. I did,
Show everybody this cover again. It is so cute. I
It's
love
so
it.
cute.
And it's so Valerie. People who know Valerie, this is so Valerie. I love it.
Yeah, so I learned a lot. I realized next time I'm going to hire a formatter and those kinds of things. You kind of learn these things. But, after speaking for, 10, 15 years, that I've had all this material. So I thought, you know what? And people would always ask me afterwards, do you have a book? And I'm like, I'm working on that. Taking that information and finally publishing it, self-publishing it has been a big goal. And with all this downtime, I finally had the time. I'm going to do this now.
Well, it's a wonderful book. I really, really just picked it up and just started reading through it and went, oh my gosh, I want to do this. I can do this. So, and it's, the prompts are something, and there's wonderful quotes for each day to help keep you inspired, and you tell your stories and then encourage people to write theirs. So everybody needs to get this book. It is wonderful. If you are interested and want to journal, this is the book for you. So does anybody have any last minute questions or comments before we say goodbye tonight?
I think it's your writing style.
Mm-hmm.
It's very easy and it just flows. And I've enjoyed, as much as I've gotten through it. I have it on the Kindle version, which is on my phone and the laptop. So I have it with me, but the quotes is what gets me going when I read the little, just if it's just a sentence or something. I think it's something that could inspire me to do something, more and finish it. And I think that's the big thing, is being able to finish it, like Melissa mentioned, about a process. And so I think that's where the guidance needs, the coach or whatever you want to call it, motivator, your genealogy buddies or whatever. But I like the process and the flow of your book. So I appreciate that, because there's not a lot of books, and I don't want to say self-help, but guides or even a journal, because yours is a journal. It flows very nice. I mean, you're actually walking through, and I'm going to tell Melissa, she's got a process there. So you'll have that. Yeah, it's good.
You know, it well, I had in mind because I'm a genealogist and family historian, that
Yeah.
of course that appeals to, so anybody who is interested in that, it would be interested. But what I was really surprised, because my husband is not a journaler and he's not a genealogist or family historian, but he suddenly got in and he suddenly saw the reason for it. And now he's like journaling and everything. So
good.
somebody who isn't a journaler, somebody who isn't into genealogy or family history, can be inspired and get, to see, because it makes it really step by step, just baby steps.
Yes.
Started.
Right. Oh, it's wonderful. I really encourage everybody to take a look and get this book. It's wonderful. We'll have all these people journaling and capturing their family story. So thank you, Valerie, for being with us tonight and your encouragement in writing this book so that you can help all of us be better journalists and or journalers, I should say, and capture our story. So thank you so much. And with that, we will say good night, everybody, and we will see you next time on GenFriends. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.